Symposium. I am your host, yes, woo, energized. All right, I am your hostess, Christine Taylor. We have 3 amazing speakers coming up for you today, and I hope that you could stay for all 3 of them. We have Tim Riley, we have Scheherazade Fleming, and we have Pash Pascal. Just a couple of housekeeping notes that we have. Each presenter is going to talk about 20 minutes. Pending they don't go over, we'll have some time for Q&A. I'll be out in the audience in front, and someone else will be in the back to have it with a microphone where you can come up and ask some questions. And then if there's a little time at the very end, if we actually have that much time, we will bring them all back in case you want to ask some broader questions of the group. Okay, so take your notes during that, and without further ado, let's kick this thing off. Like I said, I'm Christine Taylor. I'm a psychologist turned designer, licensing creative manager at Hallmark Cards right now. I'm the creative director of Pop Minded by Hallmark, and a self-proclaimed pop culture nerd. And I forgot something very important up here. I'm also on the AIGA National Board of Directors, so. So, in-house, nobody can hear you scream, right? I believe there's a certain amount of fear associated with becoming an in-house designer. It's perpetuated by this presumed stereotype of what it means and how you'll be defined in your career going forward. When I first arrived at Hallmark, I was scared of becoming the one-note designer, that my portfolio might turn into too many butterflies and too many bunnies. I frantically reached out to the local community and looking for nonprofit work and asking my friends who are opening bars and restaurants and theaters, like, hey, can I do your branding? Just to have a diversified portfolio. That's also how I met up with AIGA, because I was seeking out a community outside of Hallmark of creative professionals. You see, I had conjured up this stereotype of what Hallmark was, and I presumed that I did not fit in even before I got there. A century-old culture that had been seated in legacy and tradition was a far cry from who I was. My first few years were rough. I pushed against the grind, challenged the status quo. I was labeled a disruptor before that was a good thing. I could have let those frustrations of being different and not fitting in eat at me, but I relentlessly pressed on, fighting pressures to fold into the corporate culture in order to maintain my own personal style. One of the first things I read when I got there was what was described to me as a Hallmark survival guide called Orbiting the Giant Hairball by Gordon MacKenzie. Many of you are probably familiar with this book, but for those that are not, it really is a creative survival guide to corporate culture. Written in the 90s, it still has really a lot of poignant observations and anecdotes that ring true to today. Gordon describes corporate bureaucracy and politics and policies and processes as this giant hairball that inhibits original thinking and creativity. And in order to navigate the ins and outs, you must find a way of orbiting the hairball instead of getting stuck in it. One of the things that stood out to me was his thoughts on maintaining your unique self in an organization despite its attempt to pull you into its own culture. Gordon believes when you come into an organization, you bring with you an arcane potency, which stems from your uniqueness. Rather than being seduced by a company's culture, find the goals and the attributes of the organization that touches your heart and releases your passions. If you can achieve and maintain the delicate balance of managing the company's culture and remaining committed to your personal relevant values and goals of the organization, you'll be out of the hairball, into the orbit. The place where you can tap your one-of-a-kind magic, your genius, your limitless creativity. I've been told by many of my colleagues I've had successfully learned how to orbit the hairball or navigate the company's culture. But really, I just pursued those passionate interests and I found alignment with them at Hallmark. I was able to turn this into this. 18 years later, I will still tell you I never fit into the company's culture. But what eventually happened was I started to become embraced by it. I believe when a company can hire, embrace, and leverage the diversity of its workforce, they have succeeded in redefining the culture to one of inclusivity, where we all succeed as individuals together under shared values and goals. Despite its corporate hairball, Hallmark is focused on fostering positive and inclusive creative culture. One way they do that is Hallmark works with us and encourages us to work with nonprofit organizations. In fact, for the hours that we spend, for every 25 hours, they donate back to that same organization. Another example was something that bloomed from redefining Hallmark creative community's sense of purpose. It's called My 5 Days, and it's a hashtag My 5 Days because it's on Instagram, and you're welcome to go check it out. It's an initiative that was established to live out the idea that originality is everything. If we are always head down in our day-to-day work and not taking time to step away in order to bring new thinking, new ideas, skills, insights, perspectives, how can we truly be original? My 5 Days helps us do that by giving us 5 work days off to explore any type of creative endeavor that we wish, to help us recharge and then share our experiences and outcomes with the creative community on Instagram. I mean, some people are just like, I always wanted to build this furniture, and they'll just do it. It's really awesome what comes out of it. So I encourage you to take a look if you have any interest. Another real cool thing that we do is we have an annual leadership conference where we bring outside speakers under a theme, much like an AIGA main stage or a TED Talk. That is where I was fortunate enough to hear and meet Tim Riley, one of our first of the 3 amazing speakers that in their own individualized experiences have found their own orbit in their in-house environments, whether that be at a startup who has revolutionized how we buy glasses, or designers making the transition from agency to in-house in both the public sector and education sector, as well as the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry. But what they do all share in common is the practice of not letting their company's culture define them. But by using their creativity, they have helped reshape the culture of the environment surrounding them.